Okay, tell me, does this happen to you as well? Like, if there is a lot of buzz going around a movie or a TV show, and you kind of fall into the FOMO and you try to watch the series or the movie, but then for some reason you just can't watch it. Like maybe you don't have a lot of connect with it, or any other reason could be, but you just can't watch it, and then you kind of make a decision and you kind of reframe from the TV show or the movie and you say, okay, I'll watch it, I'll definitely watch it, but when I feel like watching it. And this is exactly what happened with me when season 2 of The Bear was actually premiering last year. Like, I had tried to watch the first season, the first episode, I was really hooked into it, but I just couldn't finish the first episode for whatever reason, I don't even remember now. But then I decided, okay, I'll watch it definitely, but when there's a calling from that show, like, I know it sounds very but it does happen. And please tell me, does this happen to you as well? Like, there's this calling from a movie or a TV show, like, okay, now this is the time to watch it. And I had that with The Bear, and I watched it yesterday and day before, and wow, I'm so glad that I waited on to watch this series, because the entire 2 seasons are just chef's kiss. I'm going to talk a lot about this series, so let's start. So first of all, the main thing that really pops up is the way the conflicts is shown in the movie, in the series, and straight away you feel that the conflicts that are shown really feel real. Like, there's this realism about those conflicts, and at some time I know that some of the conflict just feels exaggerated. Like, you feel, okay, the conflict started from this point, but this point isn't that much of a big point where you just escalate the entire conversation into a conflict. You just feel like sometimes it's just exaggerated, but as you learn that there's a reason behind that as well, then you really appreciate the writing of the show. Because in season 1 we get a lot of moments where we see that there's a lot of, a lot happening behind the kitchen, but then you feel, okay, this conflict shouldn't have been that exaggerated. But then you also realize that the reason those conflicts are exaggerated is because the characters, the shared history between the characters, and also the things that the characters are going through in their own life as well. Like, almost every character in this show is actually going through with something or the other in his personal life, and also there is a shared history between almost every character. Like, almost every character is a shared history, which adds on to that tension between the scenes and the realism between the scenes, the realism between the conflict scenes. Absolutely loved it. So you got to praise the writing, you absolutely have to praise the acting of it, and then the way the chaos is shown, the filming of it really needs appreciation. Now, I'm not talking about the conflict scenes, but the way the show chooses to show chaos in it is really breathtaking. Like, the way the show actually chooses to film the chaos scenes is really good, because they do 2 things. Sometimes they use a lot of choppy scenes, like a very fast cut scenes, and sometimes they use these long scenes. Like, I was really amazed by the way they integrated all those longer take scenes and those very choppy scenes, like very fast cut scenes, and that really creates a lot of chaos, a lot of tension in the scenes. And the background music also does wonders to the show. Like, again, absolutely love that aspect of how they chose to create tension, create chaos in normal looking scenes. Then there are 2 particular episodes in the entire 2 seasons where the show just peaked. Like, in first season it was the 7th episode, which was it was an 18-19 minute long episode, but it was shot in one take. Absolute chaos, absolutely brilliant. And in the second season, undoubtedly it was the Christmas episodes. And with the Christmas episode, I was entirely in 2 minds. Okay, I'll talk about it later, but let's talk about first the 7th episode of the first season. First of all, let me tell you, when I was watching the episode, until about 5-6 minutes, I just didn't realize that it was a one take shot. Like, the entire episode was shot in one take. Now, I know there are other techniques, other filmmaking techniques we call as movie magic or film magic. When you show a one take scene, it looks like a one take scene, but it's not shot in one take. I mean, there are ways to do that. There are a lot of ways to do that, but the important thing is that they decided to do the entire episode in one take, and it was just brilliantly executed, because there was this layering of chaos, there's this layering of shit hitting the fan, like all those things just happening at that moment, and it just feels real because it was taken in one take. And as I was saying, that the first 5-6 minutes I just didn't realize that it was a one take scene, and actually noticed that it was a one take scene when like the pages from that ordering machine kind of went off, like there was a lot of orders, and that was the moment I realized, oh, it was a one take scene. Then I went back again, then I started to rewatch the episode, and I was just amazed by how beautifully they executed that episode. I mean, that episode was just filled with chaos, and just felt so real. Fantastic. And when you are shooting a one take scene, there are a lot of things that really goes wrong. The actors had to be at the right place, at the right team, at the right time. There has to be this, beautiful, like a melody kind of a structure. It's like a dance. It's like a really melody kind of a dance. Wonderful. And the second episode I was talking about was the 6th episode of the second season, the Christmas episode. The Christmas episode was the longest episode. It was over an hour, but the first probably half of the episode I was like, oh man, that's just so so many characters. They're all loud. A lot is going on, and the focal point of all of this is the way that they use the Chekhov's gun. If you don't know, let me explain. The basic way to explain Chekhov's gun in filmmaking is like, if you show a gun at the start of the episode or at the start of any movie, then you have to fire it later on. You just can't show a gun and not fire it. If you show a gun, you have to fire the gun in that movie or in that episode whenever it could be. And that was done beautiful in this episode, because at the start of the episode they planned. Now this Chekhov's gun in this episode was Natalie saying to her mother, "Are you okay? Are you all right? Are you okay?" That scene, that just one sentence, like, "Are you okay, mom?" That was the Chekhov's gun. That was the plantation of that gun at the start, and then that gun went off at the end in the dinner scene when her mother just went bazookas. Then the actors, Jason Bernthal, lovely actor, the Punisher of course, and Bob Odenkirk, one of my favorite actors. I really regard Bob Odenkirk very, very high. Better Call Saul fan, you see. But boy oh boy, that entire dinner scene. And before I talk about the dinner scene, I want to talk about the first half of the scene, the first half of the episode. I was getting bored of it, like really. I just saw it's over an hour, but I was getting very irritated with the mother's character, and I knew at that point, okay, I am feeling irritated about her. I'm irritated about her storyline, so definitely it will be important at the later half of the episode. And boy oh boy, it was so beautifully done again. But now when the dinner scene, that the entire scene with the folk happened, I was watching it on my phone, and my phone was on my left hand and my other hand was like this. I was so much in tension, and I was just so much in awe of the actors performing that intense scene. Because if you're fighting in real life, you have to be intense, you are on your toes, and I couldn't just imagine filming that scene being intense all the time. I mean, it's not an action scene. You can somehow execute the action scenes, intense action scenes, but when there's this table and it's just a stationary scene, but it's so much heavy on conversations, it's so much heavy on demeaning the other people, irritating the other people, and taking the audience with you. It really takes a lot, physically, mentally. I mean, I just was in awe of that scene from at least the filming perspective, like what the actor must have gone through to film those scenes. I mean, I'm talking a lot about it, but even it's a scene where there's just a monologue kind of situation, only one character is just blabbering about things, it's different. But here there's this whole conversation, there's this whole fight from a stationary table, and there are other characters involved in it as well. Now let's talk more about season 2. The main difference between season 1 and season 2 was the length of the episodes, the number of episodes, and the way the story treated those episodes. Because in this season we had a lot of side character plots, like the Marcus arc was very good, Sydney arc was very good as well, but the best arc of these side characters, Richie, I'm talking about Richie now. Richie is not a side character, but the way that they made things good for Richie, that was perhaps my third favorite episode of this entire series. The entire episode focused on Richie, and the shift when his ex-wife calls him and says that the other guy has proposed, and that's the switch that was needed to turn Richie's life upside down. That moment, the next morning, he was up and ready to go into the restaurant. I mean, that is just so real stuff. That was the switch that was needed for him to find that purpose. And there was no going back from that scene for Richie, or at least I thought that. But again, Very well done. Very, very good episode. Absolutely very good episode. We go through this entire 7-day week of his, and a great cameo by Olivia as well at the end. And the Taylor Swift scene too was pretty good. The Taylor Swift song Love Story, because there was history about that song as well, or about Taylor Swift, because Richie was trying so hard to get the Taylor Swift tickets for her daughter, and then he listens to the Taylor Swift song. But that scene and the Christmas episode really cementifies that why Richie was going through. And almost every character has this way of coping with grief or coping with conflicts within themselves. Like in the first season, we see that every character has their own conflict, and that conflict actually bleeds into this gigantic conflict when all of the characters are in scene. But with Richie, we really felt very distant with Richie, but that episode really made amends for it. Then let's talk about the making of the entire restaurant in the second season. The entire episode was set up at the start of it, like at the end of the season we'll be making this new restaurant, and the challenges, and in the entire season we'll be dealing with these challenges. And I really loved the way that how the entire team that was making the restaurant, it was all family. Like Fax, Natalie coming back, I was glad she came back, and everyone was just this big family unit. And Tina as well had a very good act, along with Ibrahim, though he was just forgotten after the second episode or first episode, I think. Then he came back later, but he had that small moment of his as well. Like he was refraining from the changes that Michael left. Like when he was with Michael, it was very different now. He was okay with the changes, but at the same time not okay with his changes. Then Tina, the episode where Tina sings, that was pretty nicely done as well. Like there was moment for every character to shine. Yeah, there was at least one moment for every character to shine in the second season. And the Tina was the singing scene and the knife scene between when Tina actually takes the knife of Carmi, and that angle was, and again I really love that chemistry between them. Now lastly, we'll talk about just two big things, and the one thing is how Carmi actually tried to screw up everything, and the second thing I want to talk about how they planted certain things that when they come back later it really strikes you. Like the first, let's talk about the first thing, like how Carmi actually screws up everything, and that is his defense mechanism. Like he thinks like whenever there is something good, when there is something good happening, there will definitely happen something bad, and that is just how he rolls with it. Like in the final season as well, he sees at the corner of the room, at the corner of the restaurant, he sees that guy which used to be his boss, kind of a very toxic boss, and because he sees that guy, the entire memories actually comes back to him, and then shit actually hits the fan as we go into deeper into the episode. But when we realize that that man was not at all there, it was just his imagination, or maybe say it was an hallucination of his. And that is when it really struck me, like he really screws things up for himself. He really does that. And let's talk about the last thing, that how some things were actually planted in the episode which when came back was really good. Like in the first season was the letter of Michael, the letter that Michael actually left for Carmi, but for some reason at the start Richie finds it, but he doesn't give it to Carmi. And then at the end he gives it, and we realize, okay, Michael wanted Carmi to, fix the place and let it rip. That was very well planted. And the second thing that actually happens in the second season, and that is the fridge guy. I mean, he has this moment where he has to call the fridge guy, but at the same time his girlfriend Claire actually calls him, and he is in the dilemma of whether to call the fridge guy or to pick up the call of Claire. But then Marcus comes in and he goes off with Marcus, and that scene is just put to a hold at that point. And then it comes out right at the end when he gets stuck in the fridge. And how cool was that? Like he gets stuck in the fridge, and after that he breaks up with Claire. A lot of bad things happen, but that also makes way for, again, Richie to shine in that last episode. Like he takes everything on. He and Sydney, they just do it right at the end. So yeah, I really love the show. I really did love the show, as you might have guessed from the way I was talking about it. And I think I'll be calling this review the laid back review that I had talked about earlier. Like, I'm going to start a new series in which I'll be reviewing a few movies or a few TV shows like in a very laid back manner, a very one-to-one manner, without a lot of cuts. I'll keep the entire footage very raw, and I won't include a lot of pictures as well. It will be just raw and as real as possible with a few cuts. And I think I'll keep it in that segment of videos. So laid back reviews, episode number 2, here it ends. And yeah, the third season of The Bear is actually coming out in the next month. Excited, definitely excited. Please share your thoughts in the comments about this episode, and as always, thank you so much for watching.